Yayını başlatabilir misin?
first we have to know what's methanol. Methanol is a chemical product, and also it has alcohol and has a lot of has specific properties which is represented as flammable, toxic, and is very dangerous for environment. And also its interest in a lot of productions, manufacturing as alternative fuel for ships and also for airplanes. My operation focuses our study concern all the operation chains which started from the storage tanks which we are stored methanol product inside it, and then through the pipelines to the loading arms, after that to the ships, and also across maritime transportation. And in our study, there's a lot of safety challenges. We focus on 3 areas of these safety challenges. As we know, methanol is high flammability, toxic, and harmful for environment. And we will speak about all the risks which is poses to the environment. Risk management. We need efficient shipping process and severe transportation and severe transportation from start to finish in the procedure, and we know how to handle it and store it well. If handled and stored well, we will prevent all the risks which can occur. Now, the challenges. Now I'm speaking about our objectives. Identify challenges. I speak already. We have to map all the challenges which are related to operational issues, technical issues, and regularity issues. Operational issues are related to daily handling and transport in maritime supply chain. Technical issues include equipment which are monitoring the transport this product to the ships across the marine transportation. And regulatory issues are related to safety rules and international standards. After that, analysis procedures. We analyze the procedure in our study, how methanol transport and unloading and ships movement, also cargo handled from ship to ship or from ship to shore. These are important to prevent accident and protect the environment. Examine a process. We map the methanol path flow step by step from storage tanks through the pipelines, loading arms, finally to the ship. And these are important stages which helps us to reduce the accidents which may be occurs. Okay. Improvement performance. We improve performance by strengthening risk management to support safety and protect environment. That means better risk management means fewer accidents and more reliable supply chain. Now, our methodology it's based on supply chain and focuses on logistic systems. These gives us a real data such as actual waiting time at port for every ships, and also what time every ship it takes to load or unload at port, and also how much fuel it needs and what failure causes. Process focused. We focused on this process step by step. From each stage has its own risk. By breaking it down, it helps us to know where safety important are needed in every stage. Safety performance. We improve performance by reducing environmental risks, enhancing safety procedures. These results in fewer accidents, cleaner oceans, and more efficient operation. And here is my results. First, practical recommendations. We provide practical recommendations for suppliers and customers. These help us ensure that the process is followed at every stage correctly and properly. After that, we focus on sustainable transport. In sustainable transport, within a green supply chain to reduce environmental impact and improve sustainability by integrating safety with environment goals. Operational improvement. We focus on improving testing and monitoring system. This includes early detection of issues, real-time cargo tracking, and better marine supply chain. And also, if we improve the maintenance and inspection for every stage in manufacturing, in loading, we can affect the performance correct. Operational procedures. Safe methanol transport requires effective protocols across the entry supply chain. Every step must be follow clear and constant procedures. System enhancement. We improve the system by enhancing monitoring and safety development. Strategic management. Strategic management depends on strong risk management and strong risk management strategies and efficient use safety measures. If planning is not enough to strategic management, we must act or we must take an action. Finally, integrated safety systems are essentially for safe and efficient maritime supply chain and operation process that help protect people, cargo, and environment. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you for the presentation. Do you have any questions? I'm going to ask the question. Is this a completed study?
It's random processing now.
Maybe you could say that instead of findings, maybe you could say that it's just a review.
No, it's not a review.
It's not that.
It's not a review.
But if it's the findings, that means you have completed, follow the methodology and completely find some gaps and then so forth.
Still, but this is only previous for my study.
Okay. And one more, why did you choose that substance?
The substance is my occupation. So,
But is it a different substance? I mean, is it,
yeah, it's my occupation, and as I said before, I'm doing master for methanol, especially for methanol. And recently, this methanol is become more required globally as alternative fuels for ships and also airplanes. Okay.
So our next presentation, it will be presented by Özgür with the minority shareholder protection as a core pillar of the corporate governance.
Good afternoon, everyone. Esteemed professors, dear colleagues, I'm Zeynep Özgür. Currently, I'm working in the law department, but I have worked in the business department approximately for 8 months or something. Back then, I realized the importance of the interdisciplinary studies. So, when I saw this conference, I thought the minority shareholder protection as a core pillar of corporate governance, the case of Turkey, would be a valuable contribution. I must apologize beforehand because I'm going to speak a little bit too quickly, but there is a lot to cover, so I think it could be understandable. So. So in the contemporary corporate landscape, the safeguarding of minority shareholders has evolved into fundamental purposes for establishing transparent and accountable organizational structures. Within this shifting environment, the relationship between various shareholders and groups of management has taken into crucial importance. As robust legal protection is vital to securing investor confidence and facilitating capital raising. This study states minority protection within the legal framework of Turkish commercial code, contrasting it with the general partnership principles of ordinary partnership regulated under the Turkish Code of Obligations. So historically, the Turkish law transitions from person-oriented partnership to structures as the institutionalized corporate entities. Minority rights have come to serve as the vital safety valve against the potentially unchecked power of controlling shareholders. Also, in today's globalized economy, the safeguard of minority shareholders has evolved beyond the mere legal compliance check. It is now a fundamental purpose for building transparent, accountable, and resilient organizational structures. For emerging markets like Turkey, robust protection is not just about fairness. It's a strategic imperative for essential and fostering investor confidence, and also it ensures the long-term stability of capital markets. For this reason, from a strict legal standpoint, between majority rule and minority interest by establishing specific capital thresholds. And unlike the Turkish Code of Obligations general rule, which often relies on anonymity, the TCC identifies minority status through ownership of at least 10% for non-public companies and 5% for publicly held companies. And the business-related significance of this study lies in the TCC's progressive adaptation of stakeholder theory, as evidenced by the Articles 553 corporate health also affects the entire financial ecosystem. By allowing creditors to initiate claims, the law ensures that directors manage risks in a way that fosters long-term sustainability rather than just short-term profits. Finally, from a strategic perspective, my research made me realize once again that control in modern corporation is not exclusively centered only more than 50% of the capital. And in the Turkish context, control is frequently exercised through voting power. And privileged shares also contractual agreements. Because control can be achieved without the majority of capital, the law necessitates more nuanced and powerful remedies. The identification of the solution for just causes under Article 531 serves as ultimate strategic instrument of corporate accountability. Once again, acting as a safety valve to counter potentially unchecked power of controlling shareholders. So, this study employs also a comparative legal methodology, analyzing the interplay between the general provisions of the TCO and specialized mandates of the TCO. To assess this evolution in Turkish law, I integrated a framework based on the specific theories that I mentioned before. The research evaluates the profound shift from person-oriented structures to institutionalized corporate entities. The transition from the default principle anonymity to majority-based governance is balanced by threshold of minority rights. So it's obvious that 10% for non-public and 5% to publicly held companies. So providing that, and to move to our core of our analysis, we must examine the specific legal instruments that transform corporate governance from a theoretical concept into a functional reality. In the Turkish legal system, these remedies represent a graduated toolkit designed to ensure that management remains accountable to all stakeholders, regardless of their share and size. It is critical that to remember those matters. So the Turkish Commercial Code strikes a delicate balance between the efficiency and majority rule and the necessity of minority protection by establishing clear capital thresholds. These thresholds serve as the gateway of for the shareholders to exercise their statutory rights. A shareholder of group that holding at least 10% from this example of the capital is classified as minority for non-public and publicly held companies is obvious that it's over to 5%. It is critical from a business perspective that I moved too fast, but it's okay. To understand control term, it's not exclusively attached to only 50% of the capital. Control is often exercised through a superior voting power and privileged shares, or complex contractual agreements. Consequently, these thresholds allow even smaller blocks of investors to change management if they believe the company's strategic direction is compromised. And the TCC provides several essential instruments of corporate accountability that to precede the nuclear option of this resolution. So these remedies are the right to request a special auditor. This is a power tool, so it's also monitoring tool. It allows the minority to clarify specific concerns regarding financial mismanagement or irregularities that the General Assembly might otherwise overlook. Also, the power to convene General Assembly should be mentioned. Now, minority shareholders meeting the threshold can bypass the board to call GA meeting and or add specific items to the agenda. This ensures that critical issues such as director liability cannot be suppressed by the dominance of majority. And the institution of just cause can be mentioned within this perspective as well. I already mentioned Article 531, but it's important how this article acts as a deterrent. So, most significant legal innovation for minority protection in the TCC is the ultimate remedy for solution for just cause. And this article, in the absence of this provision in also previous codes, liability claims were often the only recourse which frequently provide insufficient interest directors. Also for this article, and the important part about this, that the solution is the most severe remedy available. It is more existing forces controlling shareholder to respect minority interests, as the potential liquidation of the company represents total loss of the control premium and ongoing business value. So as Turkish law transitions from person-oriented partnerships to institutionalized entities, this article serves as the vitality safety valve once again, and it effectively counters the potential of unchecked power of contract shareholders who might otherwise engage in minority oppression. While remedy is the solution, the courts often use this article to maintain a fair out. So forcing the majority to buy out the minority at a fair value, thereby the preserving of the company by providing this oppressed shareholder with an exit. That came across as a solution from the Turkish legal perspective. So in summary, and also for concluding my speech, this research underscores that an equitable protection system is a strategic necessity to maintain the integrity of the corporate governance ecosystem in emerging markets in Turkey. By adapting stakeholder theory, as evidenced in Articles 553 and 555, which grant creditors the standing to directors, and also TCC acknowledged that the health of a company impacts the entire market. Also, robust minority rights calculated to the third power of Article 531 ensure long-term corporate sustainability and ethical management by aligning the interests of the board within the broader goals of the capital market. Before concluding my speech, I also realized that I should also mention these theories. As I mentioned before, I taught stakeholder theories, shareholder theory, and agency theories that I used in my full research. So stakeholder theory posits that cooperation is primarily responsible to maximize profits for its shareholders in a company. And also the shareholders came across as its owners. And also the stakeholder theory that I mentioned, that we have connection with the TCC Article 531, it posits that business should create a value for all its stakeholders. And we can give example of the stakeholders, which includes employees, customers, suppliers, communities, and investors, rather than exclusively maximizing shareholder profit. And the agency theory explains the relationship between principals, and it came across as owners and shareholders, and agents, which came as management and employees. And this theory focuses on resolving conflicts of interest that arise when agents do not act in the principal's best interest. So, in summary, to conclude this research, because I also tried not to explain too much these regulations from a legal perspective, I want this research to be an interdisciplinary study, because the sustainability of any kind of corporation is also directly related to social practices and also the business relations as well. This research underscores that the equitable protection system is a strategic necessity to maintain integrity of the corporate governance ecosystem in emerging markets. And that robust minority protection is the strategic imperative that will define the next era of Turkish corporate law. It also directly affects the other most of our codes, legislations came across to our codes when it's like beginning of the Turkish Republic and it's civis code, or we take several measurements from the German codes as well. But when we compare these corporate governance theories and regulations and the essence of these codes, we came across and we also saw the problem and what legislator aims to solve the solutions from the Anglo-American law systems. So basically, we don't have that sort of regulations, but the beauty of the Turkish or also European legal systems that we can say we have basic legislations like Turkish Code of Obligations or Commercial Code. And these percentages we came across with are stated in these codes as like 5%, and we mentioned these corporations, and like 10% are non-public company, etc. But there might be some sort of exceptions if it's a contractual arrangement between two parties that we can come across with as well. But we also should be really careful because the lawmaker also make this decision strictly. So it might be impossible to extend these thresholds as well. But it should be also lawmakers should be really keep themselves updated because these thresholds can be changed, or also there might be a contractual arrangement between two parties that can change it as well. And I mentioned General Assembly or the Board of Directors, there are different provisions that might provide us different legal remedies. So when we search something like that, and we also think about as a part of the General Assembly or even an employee or some from other positions, it's important to investigate whether there is an integral arrangement or like contractual agreement or something like that exists, or is it also applicable to our current legislations as well. But when it comes to corporations, it's also important to bear in mind that there might be another secondary provisions to provide another issues as well. Because in today's corporate governance market, especially in the countries like Turkey, there might be different secondary legislations that should be also bear in mind. And also there are various types of corporations that work in different types of sectors, and also there are many of the secondary provisions that list as well. But from a general perspective, that TCC, the allowability to provide this threshold is the main rule, as we can see from that part. Thank you for your question.
I want to ask why did you do it only for Turkey example?
It was easier.
Did you compare with the other countries?
Actually, when I tried to understand these theories, I also checked the United Kingdom approach and the American approach, but they also studied many times and also gives us the clues to understand what's the main aim of the legislator. When we talk about these thresholds and the limits, the basic core is providing the best outcomes for the parties of this connection. So when we talk about from a stakeholder part, it also creates the maximized value for the owners. But from besides the legal standpoint, it also affects the human conscience, because what about the workers? What about the employees? I mean, what are their benefits from this? So for sustainable economies, for example, if the companies continue with these procedures, they should also provide something to other agents of their countries as well. But Turkey was easy to study from my perspective, but also it can be changed, and also it can include many various topics from this regard. Also, we can specifically also investigate, for example, just from like previous study, an oil company can be examined as well by a specific example. So they might be also different secondary legislations from that part. So that's why I decided to give this as an example. Thank you.
Thanks for presentation. We can have the next one.
Thank you.
Okay, so our last presentation is AI, data and governance, challenges for middle powers. Turkey as a case study.
Assalamualaikum. I am Bugar Khan, student of PhD in the National History Department in Altınbaş Üniversitesi. You may be finding me odd that one from IR is presenting here, but somehow we have interest in artificial intelligence and data and governance, and we've done some work I'm from Pakistan at my home also. So this will be a short study still going on, but we're working on it. This is in the abstract. And the first part will be presented by my wife, who is also a journalist. She will be introducing and giving the scope, and then I'll take over.
The accelerating proliferation of AI data, ecosystems, and cyber infrastructure presents a formidable governance challenge, demanding an interdisciplinary synthesis to understand their foundational principles. For emerging economies, however, the relentless pace of technological race precludes protective deliberation. Inaction risks permanent plurality within the global digital order. The imperative necessitates urgent but sophisticated policy interventions to rectify the critical asymmetry between the architects and operators of these systems and the intermediary or consumer economies. So this paper is an explorative laboratory effort through qualitative analysis to understand the challenges faced by middle powers in bridging the digital gap and meandering through the ocean of AI and data and finding a way for sustainable, indigenous, and innovative cyber governance. Here we have scope and theoretical framework. The study is framed in 5 sections. Section 1. An effort has been made to understand the nuances of a seemingly dry subject of data governance. Section 2. Tries to draw conclusions from the United States approach to AI risk management framework. Section 3. Ethics constitutes an indispensable foundation for sustainable digital societies, serving as the essential compass for navigating complex cyber governance trade-offs. Section 4. Power crisis and the limits of AI lessons for the emerging economies, focuses on the gaps between power generation and the digital ambition. Electricity, the essential lifeline of the digital era, emerges as the critical bottleneck for the AI revolution, casting its shadows over the nations striving to break the developmental gap. Section 5. Forging a sovereign digital future, a strategic imperative for ascendant nations like Turkey, is the most important part of the study. It is a diagnostic assessment of Turkey's cyber governance ecosystem, identifying strategic gaps, whether with international benchmarks to propose policy intervention. So we have, in a nutshell, the channel to middle powers, sustainable, indigenous, and innovative cyber governance. Now I will invite Koyan before.
So for looking at the scope, basically we're going to quickly run through the issues related to AI and cyber governance. Then of course is the power issue, ethics, and then finally come to Turkey as a case study. Now in data governance, basically we take a help from Radley's work. The spirit of the whole undertaking is based on what Radley described. Data governance is not a technology project, but a continuous business program focused on managing people, processes, and policy. Somehow, when you hear about data, I know management people understand it better. Generally is taken as very, very technical. Whereas data governance is more related to, I think, management. Now, as far as his suggestions are concerned, comes up with a practical framework. This is one of the pioneering works in terms of cyber governance, engagement and strategies building the the business case of training executive sponsorship and defining scope. Architecture and design, functional design of the governance program, including roles, owners, stewards, councils, operating models, and defining policies. Then we give basically a implementation strategy, and then how to basically go into operation, sustaining the program through practices, communication, training, and cultural change management. Look at the key concept in this work. Basically, he emphasizes data literacy. Although we found that in Turkey, I think there is not serious problem, but in some of the developing countries, the management may not be really data literate in the sense of understanding of data management. This has become a huge challenge, especially the AI infrastructure is now, imploding in the international arena. So people and culture matter more than tools. Tools concepts to help non-technical stakeholders understand data management basics. And he even says that there should be crash programs for managers of large conglomerates. Then of course is the course selection. He talks of right government style for organization could be low profile but more agile or traditional. Then he talks of the tools. Also the value or versus the ROI, return on investment. Data governance is foundation infrastructure like an accounting department. He basically says that it value is measured in long-term strategic benefits, risk reduction and operational efficiency. Now in terms of risk management, a lot of work done by Turkey, but we've taken the model from the US because United Institute we deal with technology and MIGS has done pioneering work. Since they are, I think they are the pioneers. So that's the same thing as we copied by I think European Union. So this is one of the models, but you can definitely have your business model. This is the study by the NIST AI Risk Management Framework, which is done by US Commerce National Institute of Standards and Technology. And basically it's to deconstruct the institutionalized approaches of the developed economy. And then we can definitely tailor it for developing economies or middle-level power that could be. This was released in 2023 by the UN Institute of Standards and Technology. It's a voluntary non-sector specific and use case agnostic, and generally US I've seen that they put the material for open source consultation. Main thing is the risk analysis, which we have also tried to do it for Turkey. That these are some of the important things. Basically it's of course when you're especially getting large AI models and data centers, data not presenting deployment context could be harmful. There could be biases. Then of course is complexity. If you look at the AI data centers, billions of decision points are difficult to test and validate like any other business model. He talks of the model drift, emergent behavior. Privacy is becoming a serious issue because of powerful data aggregation capability to create new privacy risk. And this is, I think, challenge which is being faced when it comes to the ethics part also. This is a serious challenge because people are not talking of basically a new model of exploitation. Environmental impact, data and AI could be very, very smart, but look at the power consumption. Like only for cooling of some of the data centers, you were spending like more than 50% of the energy. And then of course, issues related to supply chain. Now they give the adoption guidelines. One is of course establishing of AI governance ownership. Then is inventory AI systems, accessing risk opportunities, and implement technical controls, including large language models, firewalls, then runtimes, guardrails, and immutable backups. And then, of course, is maintenance of documentation, which is again becoming a huge challenge. Then, of course, they've emphasized on human oversight principles, irrespective of robotics and automation and everything. Still, I think human oversight would remain a very, very important factor, which will affect the transparency and explainability, proportional oversight, and clear accounting accountability in this unit. Now we come to an important part of the study is the ethics. And we've taken help from Shoshana Zuboff's marvelous work on surplus capitalism. So this is the new term being used in management and modern AI. Basically, the investigation is drawn from Shoshana Zuboff's penetrating theorization of surplus capitalism. To cut it short, system appears to be a market-driven extractive process wherein human experience is rendered as behavioral data modified and optionalized for profit maximization. Now you've seen, there are a lot of questions raised against Facebook and Google and Adobe when they were being heard in the US Senate committee hearings. And there were a lot of questions that how they are basically utilizing this data. But somehow, I think the developing world has to learn. And I think Mr. Jackie Smith's remark that this is this generation's dust capital as far as this book is concerned. It's very interesting. Maybe I think those who are interested, they can go through this book also. Basically, she says that it's an economic model that claims human experience as free raw material for hidden commercial practices of extraction, production, and sale. So that's how data is being utilized, and somehow we who are basically producing the data on your social media platforms may not be aware that this is now becoming a huge market, and that basically threat to human nature in the 21st century comparable to industrial capitalism threat to natural world in the 19th century. So there's a lot of debate going on. Exploitation, how we can minimize at government level, also in private sector. So basically, privacy concern, the questions of power, sovereignty, and the very nature of freedom in the 21st century. This is, I think, another area of study. Now look at the issues related to ethics. Basically, we're looking at fairness and non-discrimination, including gender biases, accountability of AI outcomes, transparency, privacy, safety, and robustness. Then it should be beneficial to human-centric, and then also sustainable. There's a huge research on why, like when it comes to power generation, we come to know that how much power is required by now these projected data centers. In a nutshell, basically, ethics in AI and data governance are inseparable, like any other management model. Now we come to the power crisis, which is now affecting, and so far Turkey is doing very well, especially in, I think, green energy. But if you look at the projection, let's say in case Turkey is not falling first country in terms of data center, but when it ventures into that, there is going to be problem related to power generation. So this is actually becoming a huge bottleneck. But this is some of the data from the US that data centers could consume 9 to 17% of their domestic power production capability. So this means that this is going to be a huge chunk. If you look at some of the studies by PGM, which is basically the largest grid manager, 60% power supply shortfalls in the next decade, starting from 27. They're talking about 27 could have blackouts. And then, of course, there's a lot of data. So it means that power is going to become, energy is going to become huge, and then we come to some of the wars which start taking place because of resources. So probably there is something to link with, basically AI and data also. This is, if you look at the last example, single large data center would consume power equivalent to 80,000 to 800,000 US homes. So look at the domestic production and the requirement and the requirement of one data center. Because US is very large. They go into, let's say 10 to 100 megawatts consumption. So this is the projection for 2030. In case it goes into the high mode, then probably we're looking at 17% of the gross domestic product of electricity. So these are some of the solutions. Probably Turkey can also take help from it. So far, Turkey is not facing major power problems, but what we are seeing is 10 years down the line, we probably will start hitting the bottleneck. This grid modernization, behind the meter generation, like US government has talked with Elon Musk and big, Google, Adobe were establishing data centers. How do they manage it? Then, of course, is alternate power pathways. And if you look at the last two points, one is they're moving to cooler regions, like there are a lot of data centers moving to, like Iceland, and why Greenland is becoming important. One of the reasons is movement of data centers. Nordic region, like Norway, is now one of the largest data centers. And on the lighter side, you can pick up president of a country and take him home and then get hold of the energy. Probably even I think I would say Iran war may be connected with power generation in the future, because there is a projection that power energy will become a huge factor. So this is just the global rate for data centers. Look at US. These are very large data centers with consumption of 10 to 100 megawatts. So it's 4,000 plus. And then you have Indonesia at 182. Turkey will be, I think, Turkey will be entering, I think, this race very soon. But so far, Turkey is managing their power very well. Why data centers are moving to colder regions? Because the cooling of data centers requires a lot of energy. It's more than 50% of the total enterprise. So we have a vision 2030. So we've constructed that how the government wants to present their own vision. Your telecom companies are already into it. I think we've heard about what Vodafone chief was there before yesterday. Then we Turkcell, and these are some of the larger data centers coming up. The issue was the one course was becoming a huge bottleneck because of most of them. Okay, now it's moving to Ankara, and then probably find some Tuzla and some of the border regions. Turkish investment in data center will be crossing $2 billion by 2031, and maybe it increases exponentially because the experience is that when you start, maybe it looks very, very humble, but the moment it starts getting benefit, then there is an exponential growth. So maybe it could be more than that. Then, of course, the movement of technology hubs and data centers to regions like Ankara is now becoming. Then, of course, the renewable energy strategy, which I'm sure is going to cover a lot. So far, this is the current status of data centers consumption. It's not Turkey has like 123,000 plus of megawatts is a huge potential and production of electricity. But we're looking at some collaboration with Google and Turkcell. And then, of course, Gulf Capital Khazna is coming in a big way, so they are going to increase the investment to $10 billion in the next decade. And then, of course, there are issues related to grid congestion, transmission bottlenecks. There's also a language challenge. We know that Turkey is very particular about Turkish language, but most of the AI and data work is taking place in English. So there is a huge gap, despite government's efforts. You have to actually bridge this gap either through cash programs to catch up till the time Turkish language becomes a major source of data. But so far it is considered as low resource. Look at the last. So this is going to remain a challenge for next decade. So maybe we'll have to work somewhere. Till that time, Turkish language is developed to a level that becomes top 3 or 4. This challenge would remain. The other option would be that we'll have more English-speaking students being trained in the data centers. This is the final slide. Basically, it should be a triangular approach. Turkey is already doing very well as compared to, let's say, Pakistan or Iran. So in the region, I think Middle East, that's why Middle East is bringing a lot of investment. One is, of course, to build a formidable edifice on existing foundation of AI, data, and cyber governance. So the way it's going, I think, just build upon it. There's no new advice. I'm sure government is aware of that. Then there's bridge the gap between straining electrical grid and the digitalization objective. This will be after, let's say, a decade. So far, if you look at Turkish renewable energy, green energy, they are one of the best in the region. So it's like, I think, I read that probably it's now touching 10,000 megawatts just by 10 to 17,000 renewable energy or green energy. Then, of course, is the ethical issue of service capitalism will profit. I'm sure government has bought off, but this is going to become a huge challenge for the public. So maybe there has to be education of the public also and government initiatives on that. A language barrier, I already mentioned, you need crash programs to cover this gap till the time Turkish language becomes the main source of data and basically Internet of Things. And then, of course, the last point that Turkey has a power program, nuclear power program. There's a lot of objection by Western countries. This could be a huge moot point. In case you want to now build your data centers and AI models, and I would say becoming, let's say, a major asset for Turkey, this could be a huge moot point that now we need electric power. Probably your nuclear program can cover that. So definitely, civilian nuclear program will get a big boost by Turkey projecting its, data requirement of the power. I don't know whether I overshot, but thank you so much for a patient hearing. Thank you.
Thank you for your presentation. Do you have any questions? Yes.
It's not a huge question. At the beginning of your presentation, you said we are still doing the research, so we are still continuing. So I would like to know what is your next step. So what kind of other things would you like to add to this research that you think is still missing and still
progress, like for instance, initially we thought that public Turkey will have no problem related to power generation. That's not one of the assumptions. Because we took the US model and the European models, and then we thought probably this applies to the rest of the world. But then we found that, let's say, Turkey was not really so bad off. So it means there is some groundwork required, which may be, some surveys, physical. Maybe we'll go and contact these companies to get more data. So that will, I think, ultimately, because when we are advising, let's say, the Turkish academia or government, maybe this study can become useful. I don't want that this should be just a study for the heck of study. So it means that a lot of input is still required from Turkey. Then, of course, we have not been able to access, let's say, primary sources within the government, which actually give the program. We know that there is an open source program available that, let's say, vision of 2030, and then there is another vision of 2035. But what is really inside? And then, of course, is the language issue. We don't know exactly where Turkey stands in terms of bridging this gap. So one is this. Then, of course, is that because we were already, being students, I was spending my time with, the exam and all, not really finding time to. So I feel that it will require another maybe 3 to 4 months. So we get more data, and then maybe your findings become more objective. Thank you.
So our last presentation is the role of ESG practices. So the last, yes, yours. Role of the ESG practices in sustainable business development. So Hannah is going to present it. Okay.
Hello everyone, first, and welcome to our second Global Business and Social Partners Conference. So today I will be presenting the role of ESG practice in sustainable business development. So as a start, I will just explain in only 3 words, basic the environmental, which means the environment or nature. Thank you. So the environmental refers to the nature. Social refers to the community, so employees and community in general. Governance, it refers on ethics and everything related to the company. Also, ESG has become important due to the global challenges such as climate change, social inequality, and corporate scandals. So today, investors, government, and consumers expect companies to act responsibly. And also, as we can see, 90% of from 500 companies publish ESG reports. So they usually work with the ESG reports. And also, as we can say, 88% also of consumers shows loyalty to that companies which develop and use the ESG strategy. And our main question actually is how do ESG practice influence sustainable business development? So this study examined how ESG practice influence the business development. Especially, it looks how environmental and social and governance factors contribute to both individual and together in the companies. So to answer for the question, it does affect positively. It has a positive effect on each environmental and social and governance has like a direct and a positive effect on sustainable business development, which we see here. Okay. Yes, as we can see, the findings shows that ESG practice have a positive impact. So, because it helps to perform better financially, build strong reputation, manage risk more effectively, and gain stockholders' trust. So here there is some data, for sure, like it was a qualitative research, and this data, it comes from like several articles and trustable websites. Also, so as we can see here, more than 43% actually, over 500 companies include measurable time-specific DEI goals in sustainability reports. So 88% of consumers also demonstrate increased loyalty to business advocating for social and environmental issues. 67% of consumers more likely to trust companies committed to social issues. And this is like based on Edelman 2025 as our reference. So the role of ESG is ensuring transparency, accountability, and ethical management, which is very important to companies and also individual community. So this case study, it's about like, I choose three very big companies, Unilever and IKEA and Microsoft. So for example, for Unilever, found that its sustainable brands grow significantly faster than others since they started. And also for IKEA invested in renewable energy and reduced costs while improving its brand image. And Microsoft focused on carbon reduction and uses technology to improve sustainability and performance. Also, so this is some statistics also from 2019 to 24. As you can see, there is like an increase in on the stages. So publishing as a report. Okay. Those also are global trends. So for 2025 to 2026. There is mandatory ESG reporting, climate as a material risk, because we know that it's very important to look at our environment and climate, and supply chain due to diligence, AI and digital integration, nature and biodiversity, sustainable finance growth also, because green bonds and sustainable funds continue explosive growth. So which is very good in terms of finance growth. For the findings and the results, so strong ESG, it's equal to sustainable growth. Companies who has like already started with using ESG are like most of the time showing the results that they are like keeping growing, and also improved corporate reputation, long-term competitive advantage. All three dimensions matters. So all of them. As a conclusion, so as we can say, ESG is no longer optional. It's the strategic imperative of our time. and it's a key driver for sustainable business development. Companies that integrate ESG into their strategy gain long-term competitive advantage. So the future of businesses is sustainable, responsible, and ESG driven. Thank you for your attention and look forward for your questions.
Thanks for the presentation. Do you have any questions? From the audience?
I have a question.
Yeah, yes, please.
I would like to know more, for example, a company that using ESG right now, what's the benefit that they are taking from? Let's say Microsoft, it's a very big company. So what's the benefit from reporting the ESG and doing that?
The benefit actually is, first of all, is loyalty, because there is a lot of consumers, they care a lot for the environment, for the nature. So using, like, for example, products which are suitable for the environment can just push the consumer to choose your company. So this is the first. The second one, ethics. So basically, if you are a worker in a company, you would like to be like in an environment which there is like ethical management. Everything is transparent. There is transparency in every, let's say, work or workflow. And for the social, for sure, like everyone has the right to be in an environment which has like human rights. So this one also matters for a lot of companies and a lot of in our community and social in general. Thank you so much for your time.
That's the end of our presentations for today. Thanks for attending.
Biraz daha sıklaşalım, kameradan çekilmek istedim. Güzel güzel.